Evan called me ugly in front of his friends and dumped me at a restaurant. Not quietly. Not accidentally. Not in a way I could later twist into something gentler if I tried hard enough. A girl like, you should be grateful I even dated you. He said it loud enough that the table next to us went silent. Loud enough that the waiter slowed down mid-step. Loud enough that it lodged itself somewhere behind my ribs and stayed there. I smiled. I don't know why I smiled. Reflex, maybe. Shock. The part of me that learned a long time ago how to make myself small and pleasant when things started going wrong. I sat there while Evan stood up, shrugged into his jacket, and walked out with Trevor and Adrian trailing behind him like this was all just part of the plan. Like this was a normal ending to a normal dinner. No one looked back. The check sat on the table between the half-empty cocktail glasses and the plates of food I hadn't touched. $347. My credit card already felt hot in my purse, like it knew what was coming. I paid. I thanked the waiter. I walked to my car without crying. I didn't fall apart until I was home, shoes kicked off, dress wrinkled, sitting on my couch with a spoon dug into a pint of cookie dough ice cream I didn't remember buying. My phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. Then again. I ignored it. All night, the scene replayed itself in my head like a glitching video. The way Evan barely looked at me when I walked in. The way he said, "Oh, you wore that." The way his friends laughed when he joked about my pasta order being ambitious for my body type. 2 years. That's what keeps knocking the air out of me. Not 2 dates. Not a situationship. 2 full years. Sunday Netflix marathons. Awkward holidays with both families. That couple's yoga class he insisted on trying where we both fell over and laughed so hard we got shushed. I thought we were solid. Sure, Evan had his quirks. Socks everywhere. Texting during movies. Little comments that always landed funny but that I brushed off because love is compromise, right? That shirt makes your arms look bigger. Have you thought about doing something different with your hair? I told myself he was just honest. That he wanted the best for me. Past me was so generous. The dinner had been his idea. A work thing. He never included me in that part of his life, always saying it wasn't professional. So when he texted me on Friday afternoon saying, "Dinner with some people from the office tonight, you should come," I felt weirdly honored. I went shopping. Blew my budget. Watched a makeup tutorial like my life depended on it. Used the fancy straightener I save for weddings and funerals. The restaurant was one of those places with tiny portions and no prices on the menu. Evan was already there when I arrived, tapping his phone, annoyed that I was 2 minutes late because parking downtown is a nightmare. From the moment I sat down, something felt off. He talked over me, corrected me, explained my own job to me like I was a child. When I mentioned something about a customer at my store, he waved his hand and said, "Maya doesn't really get how the real business world works. I manage a retail team. I've done it for 3 years. I run schedules, handle inventory, deal with corporate nonsense." But sitting there under that low golden lighting, I felt stupid anyway. Then Trevor asked how we met. I started to tell the story. Lena, my best friend, introduced us. She worked with Evan and Evan cut me off mid-sentence. Yeah, Lena felt bad for her. I was kind of doing a favor. They laughed. Something inside me dropped straight through the floor. I excused myself to the bathroom before the tears could spill. Locked myself in a stall. Texted Lena, with shaking hands. "Are you free? Something's wrong." That's when I saw the notification. Evan had posted on Instagram. Boys' night out. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I fixed my makeup. Gave myself a pep talk in the mirror that sounded hollow even to me. Just get through dinner. Just be calm. Just don't make a scene. I went back to the table. That's when the jokes started getting sharper. About my food. My body. My taste. Each one small enough to pretend it didn't hurt. Together, they felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts. When the check came, Evan slid it across the table toward me. I thought he was joking. Then he said it. "I don't think this is working anymore." I stared at him, waiting for the smile. The laugh. Anything. "I'm just not attracted to you anymore." He stood up. Picked up his jacket. Looked down at me like I was something he'd already stepped over. A girl like you should be grateful. And then he left. This morning, my phone blew up with 13 missed calls. I'm still trying to understand how everything I thought I knew unraveled over one dinner. Still wondering how long he'd been planning it. Still replaying that moment over and over, trying to figure out when love turned into something this cruel. I didn't imagine it. My maxed out credit card proves that. So do the ice cream stains on my couch. And somehow I know this isn't the end. The next morning felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The light coming through my blinds was too bright. My head hurt. My phone was face down on the coffee table like it had personally offended me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the moment where my brain would finally decide last night had been a bad dream. It didn't. The credit card notification was still there. $347 pending. My stomach twisted like it was trying to fold in on itself. I replayed the dinner again. And again. The tone of Evan's voice. The way Trevor laughed just a beat too late. The way Adrian wouldn't look at me at all. Each replay came with a new detail I wished I hadn't noticed. Had Evan always been like that? I dragged myself to the kitchen, poured coffee I didn't want, and sat on the floor because the chair felt too upright for how heavy I felt. My phone buzzed. This time I looked. Evan, we need to talk. That was it.
No apology. No explanation.
Just a sentence that made my chest tighten. I didn't respond. Lena showed up an hour later with a grocery bag full of snacks, and that look she gets when she's already decided she's mad for both of us. She took one look at my face and said, "Okay, start from the beginning." I told her everything. The outfit comment. The jokes. The favor line. The way he dumped me like he was canceling a subscription. By the time I got to the bill, my voice was shaking so badly, I had to stop. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Maya, I need you to hear this." None of that was normal. I nodded, but some stupid part of me still wanted to defend him.
He was stressed.
He's bad in social situations.
He didn't mean it like that.
Lena stared at me like I'd just said the sky was green. He meant it exactly like that. She hesitated, chewing on her lip. I could tell she was deciding whether to say something. "There's something else," she said finally. "About Evan's job. That got my attention." "What about it?" She frowned. "I've always thought his stories were off. Titles that don't really exist. Projects that don't line up. And last night, after you texted me, I did some digging. My heart started pounding. Digging how? I texted a guy I still know from his office. Marcus. Remember him? Tall, quiet, always brought his own lunch. I remembered. Evan had always brushed him off as irrelevant. Lena slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a message thread. "Marcus. I don't want to cause drama, but yeah. Evan exaggerates.
A lot.
Marcus. He's not leading anything. He's an assistant. Mostly scheduling and admin work." The room felt like it tilted. That didn't make sense. Evan was always talking about promotions. Travel. His team. Lena's voice softened.
I know.
I didn't want to believe it either. Suddenly, 1,000 moments rearranged themselves in my head. The times Evan insisted on splitting bills even when he picked the place. The way he dodged questions about his office. The business trips, where his photos looked suspiciously generic. I felt stupid, angry, embarrassed, all at once. That night after Lena left, I did something I wish I hadn't but probably needed to. I scrolled back through our messages. Old photos. Captions. Lies hiding in plain sight. He'd always talked big. Always made himself the hero of every story. I just let him. At 3 a.m, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize.
"Hey Maya.
This is Marcus. Lena gave me your number. There's some stuff you should probably know." I stared at the screen, heart racing. Whatever this was, it felt like the ground under my feet was about to shift again. I didn't answer Marcus right away. My phone sat on the edge of the couch, glowing softly in the dark like it was waiting for me to do something brave. Or stupid. I wasn't sure which one it would be. Eventually, I typed back. "Okay. What's going on?" The reply came almost immediately.
"Can we talk?"
It's a lot to explain over text. That was never a good sign. We met the next afternoon at a small coffee shop a few blocks from my apartment. The kind of place with chipped mugs and handwritten signs reminding you to tip your barista. I got there early and picked a table by the window so I could watch the door. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I wrapped them around my cup even after the coffee had gone lukewarm. Marcus walked in, spotted me, and hesitated like he wasn't sure I'd actually want to see him. "Hey," he said gently. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded. My throat felt tight. "Just tell me." He took a breath.
Okay.
"I want you to know first that I wouldn't be here if I didn't think you deserve the truth." That sentence alone made my stomach drop. "Evan isn't who he says he is at work," Marcus said. "Not even close." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. He's not a senior marketing associate. He's an administrative assistant. He schedules meetings, handles expense reports, runs coffee. Sometimes he helps put slides together, but he's not leading projects. I felt something hollow out inside my chest. What about the presentations? The travel? The promotion he kept talking about? Marcus shook his head slowly. The presentation last week? Our boss gave it. Evan just ran the slides. And the travel, that never happened. At least not for work. I thought about all the nights Evan came home late, complaining about stress. All the times he made me feel small about my job, about money, about not understanding the business world. He doesn't just exaggerate, Marcus continued. He takes credit for other people's work. He's already been warned about it. Officially. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. So when he talks about running things, about being indispensable, it's a lie. I let out a shaky laugh that surprised both of us. Of course it is. Marcus looked uncomfortable, like he hated being the one to say it. There's more. He's been telling people you broke up because you're clingy, that you kept pushing marriage and scared him off. I felt heat rush to my face. That's not true. I know, Marcus said quickly. I figured you should know what story he's telling. The audacity almost knocked the breath out of me. Evan had humiliated me in public, dumped me without warning, and somehow still managed to cast himself as the victim. I went home in a daze. My apartment felt unfamiliar, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, replaying 2 years of memories with this new lens. At some point, my phone rang.
Tina.
Evan's mom. I almost didn't answer. I considered letting it go to voicemail, pretending I never saw it. But Tina had always been kind to me. She remembered my birthday, asked about my job, hugged me like she meant it. So I answered. "Maya, sweetheart," she said, her voice tight with worry. "I just wanted to check in. Is everything okay between you and Evan?" My heart started pounding. I kept my voice neutral. "We're taking some space right now." "Oh," she said, sounding relieved. "He mentioned you had a little disagreement, but he said everything was fine." "A little disagreement." She kept talking, filling the silence. "I just wanted to make sure you're still coming on Saturday. His birthday dinner. We're all so excited. He told us you two had big news to share." My grip tightened on the phone. Big news. I hung up a few minutes later, my mind spinning. Evan had told his family we were still together, that I was coming, that we had something to announce. I sat there, phone in my lap, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't yet see. Then I called Lena. "He's lying to everyone," I said as soon as she picked up. "About everything." There was a pause. Then she said, slowly, "So what are you going to do?" I stared at the wall, thinking about the restaurant. The way he'd smiled while cutting me down. The way he'd walked away.
I don't know yet, I said.
But I'm not letting him rewrite what happened. And for the first time since that night, the fog lifted just enough for me to see a choice forming. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain served up a new version of the same question. Do I go to that dinner, or do I disappear from Evan's life like a ghost and let him keep lying to everyone who loves him? By morning, my head hurt and my pillow smelled like stress sweat and cheap lavender detergent. Lena came over with bagels and the kind of energy that said she'd already thought this through. "You can't just not show up," she said, spreading cream cheese like it was a tactical maneuver. "He's already told his family you're coming. If you don't, he'll spin it."
Spin it how?
She shrugged. You're unstable. You bailed. You embarrassed him. You name it. That made my stomach turn because I knew she was right. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to scream or throw things or expose him for the sake of drama. But the idea of Evan sitting at his birthday dinner, smiling, lying, rewriting the end of our relationship like I was some footnote he erased, that felt worse. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Evan, we should talk about what happened. I might have overreacted. Might have. I showed Lena. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. That's not an apology. That's a man testing whether you'll let him back in. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I opened my notes app and started listing things.
Dates.
Messages. Stories that didn't line up. Trips that never happened. Moments that had felt off but that I'd brushed aside because love is patient and all that. The list got long fast. That evening, Marcus texted. If it helps, he said, I can back you up if things get weird with his family. I stared at the message for a long time before replying.
Thank you. I might need that.
Friday night, Lena came over again. We stood in front of my closet like it was a crime scene. You want to look nice, she said, but not like you're trying to prove anything. I pulled out a simple black dress. The one Evan once said made me look average. Lena raised an eyebrow. That one, I said. Suddenly certain. I barely slept. My brain ran through every possible outcome. His family taking his side. Me freezing. Me crying. Me being asked to leave. Me regretting everything. Saturday afternoon. Evan texted again. Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited.
I didn't reply.
At 5:30, I sat in my car in my apartment parking lot, keys in the ignition, hands shaking so badly I had to put them in my lap. I opened the meditation app I'd downloaded months ago and never used. Breathed in. Breathed out. You're not doing this to punish him, I told myself. You're doing this because the truth matters. At 6:15, I pulled into his parents' driveway. Cars lined the curb. Everyone was already there. I sat for a moment, staring at the house. The porch light. The door I'd walked through so many times before. Then I got out of the car. George opened the door with a big smile and a hug that made my chest ache. The house smelled like pot roast and familiarity. And there he was. Evan stood in the living room, drink in hand, laughing mid-sentence. When he saw me, his smile froze. Panic flashed across his face before he pasted something fake in its place. You actually came, he whispered, pulling me into a stiff hug. We need to talk. Privately. I smiled, loud and calm and steady. I wouldn't miss your birthday for anything, I said. Especially since you've been telling everyone we have big news to share. The color drained from his face. Mary Ann clapped her hands from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. As we sat down at the table, Evan watched me like I was a live wire.
My phone buzzed in my lap.
Marcus, on my way. 15 minutes. I looked up at Evan and met his eyes.
Game on.
The table looked exactly the same as it always had. Mary Ann's pot roast sat in the center, steaming and perfect. The mashed potatoes glistened with butter. There was a salad no one would touch and a basket of rolls already half gone. The familiarity of it all made my chest ache in a way I wasn't prepared for. George sat at the head of the table. Mary Ann flitted back and forth, making sure everyone had enough of everything. Brooke leaned back in her chair, watching Evan with narrowed eyes like she was already sensing something was off. Evelyn sat beside me, patting my arm like she always did. The first 20 minutes were torture. Evan talked too much. About work. About his team. About projects I now knew didn't belong to him. Every so often, he'd glance at me, eyes sharp, silently warning me not to interrupt. I smiled. Passed the rolls. Said nothing. Mary Ann beamed at him.
We're so proud of you, sweetheart.
All these big changes at work. I nearly choked on my water. Evan launched into a story about targets and leadership and growth opportunities. The words sounded impressive, but meant nothing.
Corporate confetti.
George tilted his head. What about that Johnson account you mentioned last month?
The one you said you were leading? Evan paused just a beat too long.
Oh, that's still evolving. Strategic pivots. You know how it is. George nodded slowly, unconvinced. Across the table, Brooke met my eyes and raised an eyebrow. I shrugged slightly. Not yet. Then Marian smiled in that hopeful way moms do.
So,
She gestured between us. What's this big news Evan told us about? Evan's fork clattered against his plate.
oh,
It's probably not the right time to get into that, he said quickly. Evelyn leaned forward, completely unfazed. Are you two moving in together or not? Because Evan said you were looking at apartments. I froze. That was new information to me. The room went quiet. Evan laughed too loudly. Grandma, you're getting ahead of things. I took a slow sip of water. We hadn't even discussed combining our Netflix accounts. Evan shot me a look that could have cut glass. To redirect, he started talking about how his boss trusted him so much he'd practically been handed a company card. Client dinners. Team outings. That's when I spoke. What kind of expenses are you authorized to approve? The question hung in the air. Evan blinked. What? Just curious, I said lightly. You talk about it a lot. Before he could answer, I continued, oh, speaking of dinners. Evan took me to this incredible restaurant last week. What was it called again, honey? The one where you met Trevor and Adrian. His face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive.
the doorbell rang.
Mary Ann looked relieved. I'll get it. When she opened the door, her face lit up. Marcus. What a surprise. Evan's chair scraped back an inch. What are you doing here? Marcus stepped inside, holding a folder. Sorry to interrupt. I just needed Evan to sign a few documents for Monday. Oh, nonsense, Mary Ann said warmly. You'll stay for cake. Evan tried to usher Marcus toward the hallway, but George waved him back. Work's work. We can handle it here. Marcus took the empty chair beside me. The one-eyed intentionally left open. Evan gripped his fork so hard his knuckles went white. George smiled at Marcus. How did that big presentation go? The one Evan was leading. Marcus hesitated. Just a second. Long enough. It went well, he said carefully. Our boss presented. Evan helped support the team. Support, George repeated. Not lead. Evan jumped in. It's complicated. Titles don't really reflect. Brooke cut in. What exactly is your title, Evan? Silence. Marcus looked at me. I gave a small nod. He cleared his throat. Evan's an administrative assistant in marketing. No one spoke. George set his fork down slowly. Evelyn made a soft sound that might have been a curse. Brooke muttered, I knew it. Evan started talking fast. You're taking this out of context. I wear a lot of hats. Marcus is confused. But the questions came anyway. Specific ones.
Dates.
Details.
Names.
Evan had none. Finally, Brooke turned to me. What about that restaurant you mentioned? I took a breath. My hands were shaking, but my voice didn't. He invited me to meet his friends. He belittled me the entire night. Then he broke up with me in the middle of the restaurant and left me with a $300 bill. Evan interrupted. That's not. George held up a hand. Enough. Evan tried to spin it. Said I was exaggerating. That I embarrassed him. That leaving me with the bill was teaching me financial responsibility. Evelyn snorted.
Marcus spoke up then.
I heard Evan bragging about it at work. About putting her in her place. He pulled out his phone. Texts from Adrian. Mary Ann returned with the cake, smiling, unaware. What did I miss? George looked at her, eyes tired. We need to talk about honesty. Evan exploded. He accused me of ruining his life. Called Marcus a traitor. Said everyone was jealous of his success.
Then he pointed at me.
A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you. Marian gasped. Brooke stood up. Evelyn swore without shame. I stayed seated. The only thing I'm grateful for, I said quietly, is finally seeing who you really are. Evan stormed out, slamming the door so hard a decorative plate rattled on the wall. The house fell silent. Mary Ann started crying. And somehow, in the middle of all that wreckage, I felt something loosen in my chest. Like a truth that had been waiting finally had room to breathe. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. I went home that night exhausted in a bone-deep way, like my body had been holding itself upright on pure adrenaline and had finally been given permission to stop. I kicked off my shoes, changed into an old t-shirt, and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long time. I didn't look broken. I didn't look small. I looked tired, but steady. My phone stayed quiet for exactly 8 hours. I woke up Sunday morning to 13 missed calls and a stomach that dropped straight through the floor. 5 from Marianne, 3 from Brooke, 2 from Marcus, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. For a split second, I was convinced someone was hurt. Or worse. I called Marianne first. She answered immediately, her voice strained. Maya, thank God. Are you safe? Safe from what? She took a shaky breath. Evan left the house last night, and he hasn't been okay. Apparently, after storming out, he went to an ex-girlfriend's apartment at 2 in the morning. Drunk. Ranting. Blaming me for ruining his life. The woman, whose name I'd never even heard before, called Brooke in a panic. Brooke had to go get him. That alone made my hands start to shake. But that wasn't all. Evan had spent the rest of the night sending unhinged messages to people from work. To Marcus. To friends I didn't even know. Threats. Accusations. Long paragraphs about betrayal and snakes and how everyone would regret crossing him. Marianne's voice cracked. He said awful things about you. I closed my eyes. Then she hesitated. There's one more thing. My heart pounded. He messaged one of his friends with your address. Said he was going to make you pay for humiliating him. I sat down hard on the edge of my couch. Apparently, that friend, Adrian, had enough sense to send the messages to Mary and immediately. That was why my phone was blowing up. They were trying to reach me before Evan did. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt hollow, like my body had already burned through its fear and was running on fumes. Marianne insisted on coming over. I protested half-heartedly and then panic-cleaned my entire apartment in 20 minutes. Nothing motivates organization like your ex's mother. When the doorbell rang, it wasn't just Marianne. Brooke was with her, carrying a box of pastries and 2 large coffees. They sat at my tiny kitchen table while I tried to process the fact that my ex-boyfriend had apparently fully unraveled overnight. Brooke didn't sugarcoat it. This isn't new behavior. He's lied like this before. In college. About sports teams. About girls. About his life. We just never realized how bad it was. As she spoke, my phone kept buzzing with messages from friends who'd seen Evan's social media meltdown. Cryptic posts. Rants. Vague threats. Then the doorbell rang again. This time it was Marcus. He looked uncomfortable standing in my living room with Evan's mother and sister, but his concern was genuine. Evan's been blowing up my phone too, he said. I thought you should know he mentioned coming here. We were in the middle of discussing whether I should stay with Lena when the building manager knocked. Apparently, Evan had been downstairs earlier that morning, demanding to be let up. When he was refused, he caused a scene loud enough for half the lobby to hear. Marianne looked devastated. I've never seen her like that. Like she was realizing something about her son she couldn't unsee. While we were all still sitting there, my phone buzzed again. Evan had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against everyone's advice, I opened it. It was an old photo. Me asleep on his couch. Mouth open. Hair a mess. Captioned, Miss Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect. A girl like you should be grateful anyone wanted you. I laughed. Actually laughed. If this was the worst he could do, I was going to be fine. The laughter barely faded when there was a loud pounding on my door. Evan's voice slurred through the wood. I know you're in there. Open the door. Marcus stood up immediately. Brooke grabbed her phone. I was already calling building security. The pounding turned into kicking. By the time security arrived, Evan had backed off, still shouting. The guard didn't hesitate. He told Evan to leave or the police would be called. After a few tense minutes, the guard knocked and told us Evan was gone, though still lurking in the parking lot. Marianne insisted on handling it. She went downstairs, shoulders squared, looking more like a parent than I'd ever seen her. When she left, my apartment felt eerily quiet. Marcus stayed. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, stunned. Do you have any alcohol? He finally asked. I did. We split a bottle of wine meant for a special occasion. This counted. By the time Marcus left, the sun was setting. Lena came over and stayed the night. We ordered pizza, watched trashy reality TV, and let the shock slowly drain out of us. I thought that was the peak of it. I was wrong. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves. The first was silence. For 3 days, Evan disappeared. No posts. No calls.
No texts.
It was like he dropped off the edge of the internet. I'd be lying if I said it didn't mess with my head. After weeks of chaos, the quiet felt wrong, like the air before a storm. Then Marcus texted me on Wednesday afternoon. He didn't show up to work. Again. By Friday, it was official. Evan had been fired. Not just for missing work, but for what came before it. The emails. The lies. The credit stealing. Apparently, someone had finally put everything together. His final warning had come and gone without him even noticing. I felt nothing.
No triumph. No satisfaction.
Just a dull understanding that this was always where things were headed. Evan moved back in with his parents. Temporarily, according to Marianne. She texted me to let me know he was getting help, whatever that meant. Her messages were careful and kind and heavy with embarrassment she didn't deserve to carry. Brooke and I stayed in touch. It surprised me how easily our conversations shifted away from Evan and toward everything else.
Work.
Coffee.
Books.
She told me her parents were pushing Evan to start therapy before they'd help him financially again. Good, I thought. For everyone involved. Evan tried reaching out a few more times. The voicemails swung wildly. Anger.
Tears.
Nostalgia. Apologies that weren't quite apologies. Promises that didn't mean anything anymore. I saved them all. Then blocked him. He created new accounts to message me. They were obvious. Same phrasing. Same misspellings. You're making a big mistake. You'll regret this. I didn't. About a month later, I ran into him at Target. I was in the home section, holding up a shower curtain and debating whether I was bold enough for a pattern. I felt someone staring and looked up. There he was, holding a pack of socks. He looked smaller somehow, like someone had let the air out of him. Our eyes met. For a second, I braced myself. For yelling. For drama. For one last attempt to control the narrative. Instead, he turned around and walked away, leaving his basket behind in the aisle. I stood there for a moment, then put the shower curtain back and laughed quietly to myself. It's been 3 months now. My apartment feels like mine again. I rearranged the furniture, replaced the things that reminded me of him. I even fixed the wobbly leg on my kitchen table. The strangest part of all this is Marcus. We're not dating, despite Lena's best efforts. But we get lunch sometimes. Send each other dumb videos. It's comforting to have someone who saw the truth at the same time I did. Marianne still sends me holiday cards. It's sweet. And awkward. And human. I'm not angry anymore. Not because what Evan did wasn't awful.
It was.
But because anger requires energy, and I've spent enough of mine on someone who is never real to begin with. I'm grateful now. Not for dating him. But for finding out who he was before I tied my life to the lie. I didn't lose anything worth keeping. And that feels like winning.